The navigation officer's claws clicked nervously against the control panel as she stared at the empty space beyond their sensors. Commander Thektar had seen many things in his 30 cycles of service with the Galactic Confederation Navy, but nothing quite like this. The massive warship Stellar Harmony floated at the edge of known space, its advanced sensors straining to penetrate the mysterious void ahead. "Still nothing, sir," Communications Officer Vec reported, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he adjusted the long-range scanners. "The quantum barrier extends as far as our instruments can detect. It's like the universe just ends." Thektar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. For over 3,000 years, every species in the galaxy had accepted this boundary. The quantum veil, they called it, an impenetrable wall of twisted spacetime that defied all attempts at exploration. Ships that ventured too close simply vanished, their signals cut off as if they had never existed. The greatest minds of 100 different civilizations had studied it, theorized about it, and ultimately accepted it as the natural border of reality itself. "Sir," Science Officer Dr. Milani spoke up from her station, her tentacles dancing across the holographic displays. "I'm detecting some unusual quantum fluctuations. They're organized. Almost like a pattern." Before Thektar could respond, the ship's proximity alarms began shrieking. Every screen on the bridge flashed red as something emerged from the quantum veil. Not a ship, at least, not like any ship they had ever seen. It was angular where galactic vessels were curved, dark where they were bright, and it moved with a predatory grace that made Thektar's scales stand on end. The vessel was smaller than the Stellar Harmony, but something about its design spoke of dangerous efficiency. Strange markings covered its hull, symbols that seemed to shift and change when observed directly. As the bridge crew watched in stunned silence, the alien ship came to a stop just beyond weapons range and began transmitting. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Prometheus," came a voice speaking perfect galactic standard, though the accent was unlike anything in the linguistic databases. "We represent the Human Colonial Federation. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions in this sector." The bridge fell silent. Human? There was no species called human in any galactic database. Thektar had memorized the registry of every known civilization, from the ancient Zephyrians to the recently contacted Mollusk Collective. Humans simply did not exist. "This is Commander Thektar of the Galactic Confederation vessel Stellar Harmony," he replied, his voice steady despite his confusion. "I'm afraid there's been some mistake. There are no registered colonies beyond the quantum veil. That region is uninhabitable, our greatest scientists have confirmed it." A pause. Then, laughter, genuine, amused laughter that somehow made the alien voice seem more unsettling rather than less. "Your scientists," Captain Chen said, "have been looking at our front door. We've been watching your ships probe the barrier for centuries, waiting to see if anyone would figure out how to knot properly." Dr. Milani's tentacles froze over her console. "Sir, the quantum fluctuations are intensifying. It's as if the entire veil is responding to their presence. The readings are impossible. The energy requirements alone should what, Doctor?" The human captain's voice carried an edge of amusement. "Should tear apart reality? Should collapse local spacetime? Trust me, we've heard all the theories. Your people are quite imaginative." Thektar felt a chill run down his spine. "You've been monitoring our communications?" "Among other things. We have a saying where I come from, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. You're not enemies yet, but we've learned it pays to be careful when dealing with galactic superpowers." The tactical officer, a young Kralin named Jorix, leaned toward Thektar. "Sir, their weapons signatures are completely unknown. I can't even identify the power source. It's like they're using technology that operates on entirely different physical principles." "That's because we are," Captain Chen replied, apparently having overheard the whispered comment. "Your people build within the rules of the universe as you understand them. We build in spite of those rules." On the main screen, the human ship began to change. Sections of its hull flowed like liquid metal, rearranging themselves into new configurations. Weapons ports appeared and disappeared. The ship's very structure seemed to exist in a state of controlled flux, adapting and evolving in real time.
Impossible, Dr. Milani breathed. Matter cannot simply reorganize itself without massive energy inputs. The molecular bonds alone would require exotic matter manipulation.
Yes, Captain Chen interrupted. Specifically, what you call impossible and we call Tuesday.
Commander Thektar, I have a proposal for you. I'm listening. Your people have myths, don't they? Stories about the darkness beyond the stars? Legends of things that lurk in the spaces between worlds?
Thektar's blood ran cold. Every species in the galaxy had such stories, ancient tales passed down from their earliest spacefaring days. Stories of shadows that moved against the light, of ships that returned empty with their crews missing, of signals from the void that drove listeners mad. Most civilizations dismissed them as primitive superstitions, remnants of pre-spaceflight ignorance. Every culture has its ghost stories, Captain.
Not ghost stories, Chen replied, her voice growing serious. History. Your ancestors met us before, in the early days of galactic expansion. Before we built the veil.
Before we decided the galaxy wasn't ready for what lay beyond. The bridge crew exchanged glances.
The implications were staggering.
If these humans were telling the truth, then, the entire foundation of galactic civilization, the assumption that they had explored all inhabitable space, was built on a lie.
You're saying you deliberately isolated yourselves from galactic society? Isolated?
Shen laughed again, but this time it held no warmth.
Commander, we didn't isolate ourselves from your society. We isolated your society from us. Do you know what lies beyond the veil? What we've found in the deep dark between galaxies? Enlighten me.
Things that make your worst nightmares look like children's bedtime stories. Entities that exist in the spaces between dimensions.
Civilizations that consume entire star systems for breakfast.
Machines left behind by species so advanced that they transcended physical reality itself and went insane in the process. The temperature on the bridge seemed to drop several degrees. Navigation Officer Kes spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper.
The missing fleet of Admiral Zirian. The ghost signals from Sectors 7 to 9. The madness of the eternal quest. All true, Captain Chen confirmed. Your people have been poking at the edges of our territory for millennia. Most of the time, we clean up the mess before you even notice. But, sometimes. She trailed off ominously. Sometimes what? Sometimes something gets through. Something we have to hunt down before it reaches the populated systems. Tell me, Commander, have you ever heard of the Whispering Plague? The Empty Ship Syndrome? The Void Touched? Each name sent fresh waves of horror through Thektar's memory.
These weren't ancient myths, they were recent events, classified incidents that had claimed entire star systems. Events that the Confederation had attributed to natural disasters, alien diseases, or terrorist attacks.
You're saying those were all containment failures? Things that slipped past our defenses. Things we had to eliminate before they spread.
Captain Chen's voice turned grim.
Commander, your people think you're the apex predators of this galaxy. You've never been wrong about anything quite so completely. Dr. Milani looked up from her instruments, her tentacles pale with shock.
Sir, I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions throughout the veil. There are structures in there, artificial structures. Stations, shipyards, entire cities floating in folded space.
The scale it's beyond comprehension.
Welcome to the truth behind your maps, Captain Chen said. Beyond the quantum veil lies the human colonial federation, and, beyond that, the outer dark, where things exist that would drive your entire civilization insane just by looking at them. We are the wall that stands between your cozy little galaxy and the infinite hungry darkness.
Thektar tried to process what he was hearing.
If true, it meant that everything the Confederation believed about their place in the universe was not just wrong, it was deliberately engineered fiction.
Why are you telling us this now?
Why reveal yourselves after all this time? The pause that followed was long and pregnant with meaning. When Captain Chen spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made Thektar's exoskeleton ache.
Because something is coming, Commander. Something we've been fighting for longer than your entire civilization has existed. And, for the first time in human history.
She paused, and, when she continued, her words sent ice through the veins of every being on the bridge.
We're losing.
The transmission cut off, leaving the crew of the Stellar Harmony staring at the mysterious human ship floating before them. In the distance, the quantum veil pulsed with new meaning, no longer a natural barrier, but a deliberately constructed wall hiding wonders and terrors beyond imagination. And, somewhere beyond that wall, something was stirring in the darkness between the stars. 3 days had passed since the encounter with the human ship, and the Stellar Harmony remained anchored at the edge of the quantum veil. Commander Thektar hadn't slept more than a few hours total, spending most of his time reviewing classified files and ancient records that he'd never paid much attention to before. Now, in light of Captain Chen's revelations, patterns were emerging from what had once seemed like random galactic history. Dr. Milani approached his command chair, a data pad clutched in her primary tentacles.
Sir, I've been analyzing the quantum signature of their ship.
The technology they're using, it's not just advanced.
It's fundamentally different.
They're manipulating quantum fields in ways that our physics says should be impossible.
Explain.
They're treating spacetime like a programmable medium. Instead of working within the laws of physics, they're rewriting them locally around their ship. It's as if they've learned to edit the universe's source code.
Before Thektar could respond, the communications array crackled to life. Commander, came Captain Chen's voice, we need to talk. In person. I'm not sure that's advisable, Captain.
We know nothing about human physiology, or we're quite similar to most carbon-based species in your confederation, actually.
More similar than you might expect.
There was a pause.
Commander, what I'm about to show you cannot be transmitted. It must be seen.
Will you permit a shuttle to dock with your vessel? Thektar looked around the bridge. His crew watched him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The logical choice was to refuse, to report back to Confederation Command and let them handle this unprecedented situation. But something in the human captain's voice suggested that time was a luxury they didn't have.
Permission granted. Base 7 is clear for docking.
20 minutes later, Thektar found himself walking through the corridors of his own ship toward the docking bay, flanked by a security detail of his best warriors.
He had no idea what to expect from humanity's representatives.
The airlock cycled open, and 3 figures stepped through. Thektar had to suppress a start of recognition. They looked almost exactly like ancient artistic depictions of the mythical first ones from Zephyrian folklore. Bipedal, bilateral symmetry, forward-facing eyes, no exoskeleton or natural weapons visible. They appeared almost fragile compared to most galactic species. The lead figure removed her helmet, revealing short dark hair and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the corridor in an instant.
This had to be Captain Chen.
Commander Thektar, she said, extending a hand in what he assumed was a human greeting gesture.
Thank you for agreeing to this meeting.
He clasped her hand briefly with one claw, noting that her skin was warm and surprisingly firm.
Captain. These are your crew members?
Lieutenant Commander Torres, my tactical officer, she indicated a tall male with intricate markings on his arms, and Dr. Reyes, our xenobiologist. The third human was female with pale skin and bright blue eyes that seemed to shine with their own light. As they walked toward the conference room, Dr. Reyes spoke up.
Fascinating ship design.
Zellurian engineering, but with modifications I don't recognize.
The bioneural networks are particularly elegant.
Thektar stopped walking.
How could you possibly know about our ship's internal systems?
Dr. Reyes smiled, and, for a moment her eyes seemed to flicker with an inner light. I have an enhanced understanding of biological and technological interfaces.
It's a long story.
They reached the conference room, where Thektar had assembled his senior staff. As the humans took their seats, he noticed that they moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost predatory. Captain Chen placed a small device on the table. It was perfectly spherical and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it.
Before we begin, Chen said, I need you to understand something about human history. We weren't always what you see before you. 3,000 years ago, when we first encountered galactic civilization, we were much like your species, tool users, explorers, builders. We had faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, all the standard technologies. The sphere began to glow, projecting a three-dimensional image above the table. It showed a bustling space station, clearly of human design but far more primitive than what they'd seen of the Prometheus. This was Titan Station, our first major foothold in this galaxy. We were eager to join the galactic community, to share knowledge and culture with other sapient species. The image shifted, showing humans in simple environmental suits working alongside various alien species. What changed? Dr. Milani asked. Chen's expression darkened. We found something. A derelict ship drifting in the space between galaxies. It was massive, the size of a small moon, and clearly artificial, but made from materials that didn't match anything in our databases. The hologram changed, showing a twisted, impossible structure that hurt to look at directly. Its geometry seemed to fold in on itself in ways that violated basic principles of three-dimensional space. We should have left it alone, Lieutenant Commander Torres said quietly. But humans are curious by nature. We've always had to poke at things we don't understand. The ship was empty, Chen continued, but not vacant. There were recordings, logs, data stores containing information about the universe that changed everything we thought we knew. The beings that built it called themselves the architects. They had mapped not just this galaxy, but thousands of galaxies across the visible universe. The hologram expanded, showing a vast network of connections spanning unimaginable distances. They had catalogued every form of life, every type of civilization that could possibly exist. And they had discovered something that terrified them beyond measure. Which was? Thektar found himself leaning forward despite his better judgment. Dr. Reyes answered, her voice barely above a whisper. That consciousness itself is an infection. That awareness, intelligence, the ability to perceive and understand the universe, these are not natural phenomena. They are symptoms of exposure to something that exists outside our reality. The conference room fell silent. Navigation Officer Kess was the first to speak. That's impossible. Consciousness is the result of neural complexity, evolutionary development, is it? Captain Chen interrupted. Tell me, in all your study of galactic biology, have you ever wondered why every single sapient species develops faster than light travel within a few centuries of achieving spaceflight? Why every civilization follows essentially the same technological progression? Dr. Milani's tentacles curled nervously. It's assumed to be convergent evolution. The optimal path of development. Or external influence, Chen said grimly. The architects discovered that consciousness is contagious. Every time a species reaches a certain level of awareness, they begin to hear whispers from beyond the edge of reality. Subtle influences that guide their development along predetermined paths. The hologram shifted again, showing a timeline of galactic development. Species after species followed an almost identical pattern: primitive society, industrial revolution, atomic age, space travel, faster-than-light capability, galactic expansion. The pattern is too perfect, Torres explained. Too consistent across species with completely different evolutionary backgrounds. Something is guiding that development, shaping it for a purpose. What purpose? Thektar asked, though part of him didn't want to know the answer. To prepare this galaxy for harvest, Chen said simply. The entities that exist in the spaces between realities, they feed on consciousness. But they can't enter our dimension directly. They need willing servants, advanced civilizations that have developed sufficient technology to tear holes in spacetime. The implications hit Thektar like a physical blow. The quantum veil experiments. The deep space exploration projects. The Confederate Science Division's research into dimensional physics. All guided by whispers from beyond, Dr. Reyes confirmed. Your people think they're pushing the boundaries of science, but they're actually following a script written by entities that view your entire civilization as livestock.
That's where we come in, Chen said, standing and beginning to pace.
When humans first encountered this truth, we made a choice. Instead of continuing along the predetermined path, we decided to fight back. But fighting enemies that exist partially outside reality requires modifications.
Dr. Reyes raised her hand, and Thektar watched in fascination as her fingers began to glow with that strange inner light. The illumination spread up her arm, revealing that her entire circulatory system was pulsing with energy.
We learned to see as they see, she said. To think as they think.
We modified ourselves, enhanced our minds and bodies to exist partially outside normal spacetime.
It's the only way to effectively fight entities that don't follow the rules of our reality.
The cost was our humanity, Torres added quietly.
At least, our original humanity. We became something new.
Something capable of standing guard against the dark. Chen gestured to the sphere, and the hologram changed to show the human space beyond the veil. But now Thektar could see it clearly: vast megastructures that existed in folded dimensions, ships that moved through space by rewriting local physics, beings that glowed with the same inner light as Dr. Reyes. For 3,000 years, we've been fighting a secret war against entities that most species can't even perceive, Chen said. We've held them back, contained their influence, prevented them from achieving their ultimate goal.
But they're getting stronger, and they're getting more desperate. What do they want? Dr. Milani asked.
To break through into our reality permanently, Chen replied.
And they're close to succeeding.
Recent Confederation experiments have weakened the barriers between dimensions.
Your people are unknowingly opening doorways that we may not be able to close.
The gravity of the situation settled over the conference room like a shroud. Thektar looked around at his officers, seeing his own horror reflected in their faces.
What do you need from us? He asked finally.
Captain Chen smiled for the first time since the meeting began, but it wasn't a reassuring expression. It was the smile of a predator that had found an ally. We need you to help us convince your Confederation to stop their dimensional research before they tear a hole in reality that we can't patch, she said. And we need you to help us prepare for what's coming when they refuse to listen. Outside the conference room windows, the quantum veil pulsed with malevolent energy, and, somewhere in the darkness beyond, ancient entities stirred with hunger and anticipation. 2 weeks after the revelations aboard the Stellar Harmony, Commander Thektar stood in the main conference room of Confederation High Command on Zirion Prime, facing a tribunal of the galaxy's most powerful leaders. The circular chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species, their varied forms creating a kaleidoscope of alien biology under the harsh illumination of the chamber's lights.
Grand Admiral Vexthal of the Zellurian Empire drummed his primary claws against the podium. Commander, you're asking us to believe that an unknown human civilization has been secretly protecting us from interdimensional entities for 3 millennia.
The sheer absurdity of the claim is matched only by the evidence supporting it, Thektar interrupted, a breach of protocol that caused murmurs throughout the chamber.
He gestured to the holographic display Dr. Milani had prepared. Every unexplained phenomenon in our recent history fits their narrative.
The empty ship syndrome, the whispering plague, the quantum anomalies detected during deep space exploration, coincidence and pattern-seeking, dismissed High Scientist Mordan, her cybernetic implants whirring as she processed data.
Sapient minds naturally construct narratives from random events. It's a well-documented psychological phenomenon.
Thektar activated his personal display, showing the quantum readings from their encounter with the human ship. These energy signatures are beyond our current understanding of physics. Their technology operates on principles we can't even theorize about, yet they claim it's necessary to fight entities we can't perceive. Or it's an elaborate deception designed to manipulate Confederation policy, suggested Minister Quellen of the Trade Federation. Unknown aliens appearing from beyond our borders, claiming to be our protectors while demanding we halt our most promising research projects? It's classic intelligence manipulation. The debate continued for hours, with Thektar growing increasingly frustrated. No matter what evidence he presented, the Confederation leadership found ways to dismiss or rationalize it. Their worldview was too entrenched, their assumptions about galactic supremacy too fundamental to their identity. Finally, Grand Admiral Vexthal called for order. Commander Thektar, while your report is intriguing, the Confederation cannot make policy decisions based on unverified claims from unknown entities.
The dimensional research projects will continue as scheduled.
Sir, I strongly advise the matter is closed, Commander. Thektar left the chamber with a heavy heart, knowing that Captain Chen had predicted this exact response. Humans, she had explained, had learned long ago that galactic civilizations were too proud and too set in their ways to accept uncomfortable truths without overwhelming proof. 3 days later, that proof came. The emergency klaxons aboard the Stellar Harmony dragged Thektar from his quarters at 0300 ship time. He rushed to the bridge to find his crew and barely controlled panic. Report, he barked, settling into his command chair. Sir, we're receiving distress signals from the Altair Research Station, Communications Officer Vec reported, his voice shaking. They were conducting dimensional probe experiments when, sir, you need to see this. The main screen flickered to life, showing a transmission from Dr. Yevhara, the Altairian lead scientist at the research facility. Behind her, Thektar could see other researchers working frantically at control panels, their movements jerky with barely contained terror. This is Altair Station to any Confederation vessel, Dr. Yevhara's image said, her usually pristine fur matted with stress sweat. We've had a catastrophic containment failure during the dimensional probe test. The quantum barriers have collapsed, and something is coming through. Multiple contacts, energy signatures that don't match any known technology. They're not responding to any communication attempts, and the transmission cut to static, then cleared to show the research station from an external view. What Thektar saw made his blood run cold. The station was partially consumed by what looked like living darkness. Tentacles of shadow writhed around the structure, and strange geometric patterns flickered through the blackness, patterns that hurt to look at directly and seemed to exist in more dimensions than the eye could process. Sir, Navigation Officer Kess whispered, I'm detecting massive spacetime distortions around the station. The readings are similar to what we recorded near the quantum veil, but much more intense. It's as if reality is becoming unstable. As they watched, shapes began emerging from the dimensional breach near the station. They weren't ships in any conventional sense, they were twisted amalgamations of matter and energy that seemed to shift and change with each passing moment. Some appeared to be constructed from crystallized darkness, while others looked like mechanical spiders made of pure mathematics. Sir, incoming transmission, Vec announced. It's Captain Chen. The human captain's face appeared on a smaller screen, and Thektar was shocked by what he saw. Chen looked haggard, her skin pale and her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. In the background, alarms were sounding and crew members rushed past. Commander, we've detected the breach. We're mobilizing everything we have, but it's going to take time to get our forces in position. How long until Confederation reinforcements arrive? The nearest battle group is 6 hours out, Thektar replied. Captain, what exactly are we dealing with? The Devourers, Chen said grimly. One of the lower-tier enemy classes, but still more than capable of consuming an entire star system if left unchecked. They feed on conscious thought. Every sapient being they encounter makes them stronger. On the main screen, the entities emerging from the breach had begun moving toward the research station. As they approached, the station's hull began to warp and twist, reality itself seeming to bend around their presence. Sir, Dr. Milani called out urgently, I'm detecting massive neural activity from the station. The life signs are changing. The researchers are still alive, but their brain patterns are becoming increasingly erratic. The Devourers don't just kill, Captain Chen explained. They absorb consciousness, adding it to their collective intelligence. Every mind they consume makes them more capable of manipulating reality. What can we do? Chen's expression was grim. Stay back and try to evacuate anyone who gets clear of the breach zone. Leave the fighting to us, your weapons can't hurt them, and close proximity will allow them to influence your crew's minds. As if summoned by her words, 3 human ships materialized near Altair Station. They didn't emerge from faster-than-light travel in any conventional sense, they simply phased into existence, reality bending around them like water around stones. Thektar watched in fascination as the human vessels engaged the entities. The battle that followed defied every principle of space combat he had learned in his 30-year career. The human ships moved like living things, their hulls flowing and adapting in real time. They fired weapons that didn't follow ballistic trajectories, beams of energy that curved through space, projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and, stranger things, that seemed to attack the very concept of their targets rather than their physical forms. The Devourers responded with equal impossibility. They created gravity wells that pulled spacetime into knots, launched attacks that traveled backward through time to strike their targets before the weapons were fired, and summoned reinforcements from parallel dimensions.
This isn't a battle, Dr. Milani breathed. It's a clash between different versions of reality.
The engagement lasted for nearly an hour, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The human ships displayed incredible resilience, their adaptive hulls absorbing and redirecting attacks that should have vaporized them instantly. But the Devourers seemed inexhaustible, constantly spawning new forms and attack patterns.
Then, something changed.
One of the human ships, a sleek vessel that seemed to exist partially in another dimension, suddenly accelerated directly toward the largest Devourer entity. Instead of firing weapons, it began to glow with the same inner light they had seen in Dr. Reyes.
What are they doing? Thektar asked.
Captain Chen's voice came through the calm, strained with emotion.
The Transcendent is preparing for a soul burn. Commander, I need you to move your ship at least 50 kilometers back, immediately. Soul burn? Our ultimate weapon against entities like this. But, the cost.
Chen's voice broke slightly. The crew has to synchronize their consciousness with the ship's quantum matrix and burn out their life force to power the weapon.
It's a one-way trip.
Thektar watched in horror and awe as the human ship accelerated toward its target. The vessel's hull became increasingly translucent, revealing a complex internal structure that pulsed with rainbow light. He could see the crew at their stations, their bodies glowing with the same radiance. The impact between the Transcendent and the Devourer entity was unlike anything in Thektar's experience. Instead of an explosion, there was a moment of perfect silence where reality seemed to hold its breath. Then, a wave of pure energy expanded outward from the collision point, not traveling through space but rewriting it as it went. When the wave reached the other Devourer entities, they simply ceased to exist.
Not destroyed, not dispersed, they were edited out of reality as if they had never been.
The dimensional breach collapsed with a sound like the universe sighing in relief. Where Altair Research Station had been, there was now only empty space and scattered debris. The Transcendent and its crew were gone, their sacrifice having sealed the breach and saved the star system. 37 souls, Captain Chen said quietly over the com. 37 more humans who gave everything to protect a galaxy that doesn't even believe we exist. In the silence that followed, Thektar finally understood the true scope of what humanity had been doing for 3 millennia. They weren't just fighting a war, they were sacrificing themselves, piece by piece, to hold back horrors that defied comprehension.
Captain, he said finally, what do you need us to do?
Chen's image returned to the screen, and Thektar saw tears in her eyes. Help us convince your people to stop their dimensional experiments before they tear open a breach too large for us to seal.
And, if they won't listen?
She paused, looking older than her apparent years. Help us prepare for the war that's coming. Because the Devourers were just scouts, Commander. The real enemy is still out there in the dark, and they're getting ready to break through in force.
How long do we have? Based on the acceleration of dimensional instabilities across the galaxy? Maybe 6 months. Maybe less. Chen's expression hardened with resolve. Either your Confederation learns to accept our help, or we all face extinction together. As the human ships departed, fading back into whatever dimension they called home, Thektar made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. He opened a secure channel to every ship captain in the Confederation Navy, not through official channels, but through the informal networks that connected military officers across species lines. If the government wouldn't listen to reason, perhaps the warriors would. Because one thing had become crystal clear during the battle at Altair Station, humanity wasn't asking for help because they were weak. They were asking because they were tired of dying alone in the dark to protect people who refused to believe in the danger. And, in the vast emptiness beyond the quantum veil, ancient entities felt the dimensional barriers weakening and began to stir with anticipation. The harvest was almost ready to begin.